If you study culture, you usually run into a wall early on. On one side, you have the cold, sterile world of objective data. On the other, you have the messy, lived experience of an actual human being. Traditional quantitative methods keep the researcher at a distance. You run surveys and find statistical differences, but distancing yourself often produces broad stereotypes rather than nuanced cultural truths. So you try the opposite. You write a deeply personal memoir, but then academic committees reject it. They tell you it lacks theoretical rigor, validity, or a scientific framework. You need a bridge, a method that lets personal narrative coexist with the rigor of social science. That overlap is called autoethnography. Finding a rigorous way to structure this overlap is the only way researchers studying deeply personal cultural identities can maintain their academic credibility without stripping away their authentic voice. This brings us to Critical Autoethnography, Intersecting Cultural Identities in Everyday Life, edited by Robin M. Boylorn and Mark P. Orbe. Boylorn brings a direct academic lineage to the founders of this method. She trained under Carolyn Ellis and Arthur Bachner, who built the university programs and book series that legitimized ethnographic narratives. Orbe comes from the exact opposite direction. He spent the early part of his career relying strictly on empirical quantitative analysis before realizing those traditional methods were falling short, prompting a pivot to self-reflective study. We are going to break down their text to see if it provides the practical roadmap you need for your own intersectional research. The text serves as a masterclass, validating lived experience as legitimate and defensible primary data. Let's look at the first major application of their methodology, extracting profound cultural data from mundane everyday life. To do this, the researcher has to rigorously document seemingly boring, routine personal interactions. They apply specific academic lenses to these routines. One is relational dialectics, which treats human interactions as a series of opposing tensions, like the constant push and pull between autonomy and connection. Through that lens, normal life events, like navigating a cancer diagnosis with a partner or dealing with first-generation college status, become rich datasets detailing societal norms. The trade-off is steep. It demands intense self-awareness and a willingness to document your own messy, interpersonal flaws on paper. To succeed here, you have to sacrifice the desire to play the hero in your own story. You have to willingly place your own mistakes under the academic microscope. The book's second application tackles the challenge of navigating ambiguous, non-binary, or mixed identities. Here, the researcher resists simple either-or categories. You can't just check a box for black or white, gay or straight. The text uses complicity theory to handle this, forcing researchers to analyze their identity without relying on rigid classifications. By doing this, researchers can authentically document the friction of their culture without forcing themselves into a neat statistical box. But avoiding binary categories often creates highly complex, disjointed narratives. Traditional readers might find this frustrating to follow. Real lived identity is messy. Attempting to sanitize it for a simple, actionable conclusion strips away the actual cultural validity you are trying to study. The third application explores how the book deconstructs stigmatized or marginalized identities. This requires writing explicitly from the margins. The researcher analyzes their own systemic oppression directly. They apply standpoint theory, which argues that the subjective vantage point of a person in a subordinate position is uniquely valid data for understanding society. This creates a powerful, emancipatory text. It gives voice to muted groups and challenges standard expectations of what a scholarly article looks like. This specific approach carries severe professional risks. Writing from the margins opens the researcher up to personal attacks and professional dismissal. Traditional gatekeepers often weaponize this vulnerability. They dismiss deeply personal writing as too angry, too emotional, or unscientific. Giving a formalized academic voice to marginalized groups requires you to abandon the safety of objective distance. The risk is the cost of admission. Knowing how Boylorn and Orbe use these methods, we must look at your specific academic goals. The ultimate diagnostic question is this: are you comfortable being the primary data source for your own research? If you need statistical significance, large random samples, or sterile objectivity, skip this book entirely. Stick to traditional quantitative methods. If you want to fuse formal theory with personal narrative, you should read this. If you are looking for general fusion and sense-making, focus on sections 1 and 4. If you need a framework for studying marginalized identities, section 3 is your roadmap. The ideal candidate for this text is a graduate student or scholar in the humanities, or social sciences, who needs methodological permission to use their intersectional identities as data. Boylorn and Orbe provide the evidence that choosing vulnerability is, in itself, an act of rigorous academic defiance.